today. It's a great honor for me to host this important event. And I would like to thank IMPAC and especially Patricia and Nigel for organizing that and to making this conference possible. And I also want to thank our speakers that are here today for their participation and, of course, for that valued audience who share our concerns and are here with us today. We have come together to face one of the most urgent challenges for Europe and the whole world, the growing polarization and radicalization of our youth. And we live in a time where polarization and radicalization, especially among young people, are increasing. Social media plays a key role in that. For that, it is very important that we look that social media is spreading extreme opinions and attitudes faster and more directly. This has clear effects also to my home region, Mecklenburg-Vorpommern in Germany. So I have a school tour there. And last week, I was at a school and there I noticed that especially since October 7 in schools, we see discussions about Israel and Gaza are more and more shaped into extreme position. And for me, it was last week very hard to get in a conversation and to talk about peace in that region, which is a very important topic for me. We also see that anti-Semitism plays a central role, both in a far-right spectrum and in a public debate. Parties like the AfD or the NPD or the so-called third way fuel these tendencies. And we cannot and we will not accept this. The strength of our democracy lies in bringing together different perspectives, staying in dialogue and finding ways to create a good future for our young people. To achieve this, it is crucial that not only to teach young people about that, it is important to include them. Many young people fear that politicians do not represent them. And me, as the second youngest member of the European Parliament, for me it is important to do politics not about young people. It is important to do politics with young people. And it means we need to listen to them. We need to include them in our decision-making processes and in our opinion-forming processes. In a Committee of Culture and Education, we try to do that. And we must show them that having a reflected position is not a weakness, it is a strength, because our world is not simply black or white. Our democracy means accepting diversity and seeking compromises instead of falling into extremes. We also noticed that especially young men are more vulnerable to radicalization, often because it appeals are made to traditional ideas of masculinity. And we must be clear, what happens on social media does not stay there. Hate, agitation, and disinformation have direct impact on our reality. And this is why we need clear rules. In digital space, the same values and boundaries must apply as in real life. This means consistent prosecution of hate speech and treats of violence. And it also means holding platforms accountable in fighting fake news and division. Our goal must be to counter extremist tendencies at an early stage through education, participation, and a clear stance. Only in this way, we can strengthen an open, democratic society where young people can find their place. I am glad that we are here today to discuss how we can succeed in this. And I thank you very much for being here. The strength of Europe lies in its diversity, its democratic values, and its commitment to human rights. The great interest in this conference gives me the hope that we can confirm these principles by working tirelessly to protect our youth from the force that want to divide and destroy them. I am convinced that the good forces here can build a future where dialogue wins over division. Truth triumphs over lies, and hope overcomes hate. Together, we can achieve this. And I look forward to our exchange in the next 2 hours. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the discussion. And now I'm giving yes.
I'm giving the floor to Antonio López-Istúriz White first. Or you prefer me to start? No. You. Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much, Patricia and Nigel. This is not the first time that we are addressing these facts. Thank you for that. It's always good during this term in the European Parliament to remember everybody about the facts that we are talking about. Also, I would like to thank my colleagues from Trends that are here. Sara and Abdulaziz are there. Yes. And also, most especially from all the guests and speakers, Imam Muhammad Tawhidi, who is with us today. Also, thank you very much, because your presence is always for us reconforting. And Sabrina, thank you very much. You have the courage to support this exchange, as you and I, we are confronted with extremes every day more in this parliament and so on. Also, your voice, your contribution, and this co-sponsorship, is, a very good thing. Thank you for that. I do believe school of history repeats itself, unfortunately. And in humans, we have a tendency to always step in the same stone. Every time that there is a change of era, every time that there is, a change like from the Industrial Revolution, now the new technologies revolution, we have these social changes. And fear appears. Our societies, they don't know. What is this change, if it's going to be good or bad? I know that I am not against new technologies. I know it's another human invention done to better our life. But as humans, unfortunately, we also tend to use the negative part of this. And then fear appears. And fear, unfortunately, is an incredible political tool used always in history by the same prophets of the apocalypse, sellers of miraculous elixirs that appear every time humankind has had a change, social change. These kind of people appear. Today we call them populists. 100 years ago was nationalists, fascists, communists, you name it. We are facing the same polarization. This is not new. We should not be responsible people that are sitting around this table. That's, I think, why you're here. Very difficult times ahead. I cannot hide from you. Sabrina and I, we live this in every plenary in Strasbourg. We have to face extremes trying to get the show. We had that 2 weeks ago with the Gaza resolution. Unfortunately for them, fortunately for all of us, the resolution was painstakingly for them because there was not headlines and show. It was a balanced resolution. And that's why today, unfortunately, these positive news, are not welcomed by these polarizing people. And this affects especially our young people. They are vulnerable. They are exposed to these prophets, to these sellers of dreams, of solutions tomorrow morning that we all know it is not possible. But people are desperate. I cannot go against people that vote for extremes because they are desperate. They are looking for quick solutions to questions that are now mounting up every time more quicker than maybe politicians we can react. And these people choose, this kind of, they are attracted. They have been a long history. It's not the first time. But now, with all the information we have a way to address this. And then we come, especially, what we have to work with is with the young people. And our first line of defense, Sabrina mentioned, and I absolutely agree, is education. That's our first line of defense, first and last, because it's the next generation. Us, I always, I remember, I was laughing at my father when he had problems to use the remote control of the TV years ago. Now my daughters, laugh about me, and I don't have a clue on how to use, the new technologies. It's the next generation. We cannot do anything about the actual situation, I have to say, unfortunately. We can navigate this drama, but what we have to do is, contrary to what's happening, that everybody's thinking about today, about only today, about me and today, what we think is think about them and the future. Education, then, it's the key thing that I'm sure the experts will talk about. We need to promote. I know that they are not trending topic. They are not very attractive for the media. They do not produce clicks. But nevertheless, we have to promote healthy dialogues between cultures, support integration, and create spaces where differences are respected rather than feared. I am living this every day in my country, in Spain, where history showed us that confrontations in my country are usually solved by civil wars. Our humble aspirations to some cool head politicians is that this is not repeated again. But believe me, it's done against politicians, media, not all, but a great part, And also in Europe, why not? When I see these headlines, war in Europe. Excuse me. We don't have a war in Europe. There is a war in Ukraine. It's affecting us Europeans. Yes, this is also, we are defending our values, but the war is not in Europe. I could think that sometimes it's like they would like a war because they will have more headlines and more clicks and more money. So, our responsibility of the people that we are here today, also European politicians, it's also to create a political strategy to combat extreme organizations that are damaging our societies. I have been, and some of us, we have been advocating, against organizations like the Iranian Revolution Guard, Hezbollah, Samidun, also other terrorist organizations. But now we have also the Russians and others trying to interfere and attacking our values. So radicalization, it is used as a weapon by some and also by others trying to interfere in our democracies and to change the opinion, the approach from young people. Because they're not stupid. They are addressing the young people. That's why much of the votes from young people go to the extremes. Because it's already produced by these countries and regimes that they want to change our system. And democracies, we are vulnerable. History always teaches, especially Second World War, that at the end, democratic world, can win this. So we have some hope. We have some hope that we can win this. I'm telling especially people that are now afraid of what we are facing. The most question that I was demanded during the European campaign last year in my country, what was? excuse me, Mr. Istúriz, excuse me, Member of Parliament, is there going to be a third world war? That was the question I was confronted. That was not in a, how to put it, in a survey. No. This was people asking. I think that today in this event, and especially to young people, we have to bring them some hope. Do not deny the facts. We have a very, very tough agenda ahead. But also, and I want to end with this positive note, also history teaches us that as democracies, we have won before, we can do it again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonio. Thank you, Sabrina. I think you planted the decor of this meeting very precisely, because all of us, we have seen a huge growth in polarization and radicalization of our societies. That's why we wanted to understand the causes, but moreover, how we can fight this by sharing maybe best practices. Now, ladies and gentlemen, because we have a lot of speakers, we took the liberty to make the bios of each of the participants, and you have them on your paper that we have distributed. So I will not explain each person, so we can just move on. So our first speaker is Nigel Goodrich. As a former school principal, national curriculum developer, senior examiner, and educational consultant, you were the leading researcher in the analysis of shaping minds, shaping society. Can you share with us the findings of this research? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia. This is a report that you referred to that we published a short while ago. Maybe I'll just pass this around in case anybody would like to have a look, a quick look through that. The genesis of the report was the alarming data of 2024, 2025, is that anti-Semitic incidents in Belgium have surged by more than 1,000% since October the 7th, 2023. Jewish youth in Antwerp are pushed off bikes, buses are stoned with slurs like dirty Jew, and fully 42% of Belgian Jews consider emigrating rather than stay in Belgium, as systematic hate, somebody said, feels like October the 7th every day. As a member of the European Jewish Congress said, Ariella Wojcik, who is a parent, she said, you leave your child in a public school where they are a target, or you move them to a Jewish school and the school becomes a target. So what's happening in schools? That's what we wanted to find out. Well, there are no school books in Belgian schools anymore, but what you do have are teachers who have autonomy, and they're helped in their teaching profession by organizations, NGOs, and media who produce materials for subjects for them to teach. In Belgium, the competence for education lies with the linguistic communities, not with the federal government. But there is an exception to that. The United Nations has a Sustainable Development Goal Program for 2030. And in Belgium, a budget and responsibility for that has been given to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who passed it to their adjunct Directorate General for Overseas Development, who have very strong direct connections through ENABLE, the development organization, to NGOs, media, and other partners. They're called partners. So there's a direct line of funding between the government and the providers of educational material. Of course, in the last 15 years, as we know, we've seen an explosion in the internet and in media, in classrooms. It's not the same landscape as the one I knew all those years ago. When we did our analysis, we tried to be as objective as possible. We looked at a sample of 57 school materials from various media that deal with the Palestinian-Israel conflict. First thing we did was look at the frequency of online items about that particular conflict and all the other conflicts on the Flemish educational website called Classement. And we also looked at NGOs in Flanders and in the French-speaking community for what they were providing for young people about conflicts around the world. And what we found, well, if you have your program, you can scan the summary document. I'm looking at page 3 of that. You'll see the graphs was huge disproportion in looking at the Palestinian-Israel conflict, almost as if there is no other conflict in the world, almost as if other people who are suffering terribly don't matter, and they don't matter because they're not in that particular area. It was really quite outstanding to see the disproportion. Now, there must be a reason for that, because it's not just disproportionate, it's also partisan, because 100% of the resources were critical of one party in that conflict and not of the other. And by critical, I mean savagely critical. What we did was to come up with a series of research indicators. We read the materials from UNESCO, we read the material from the European Commission. We looked at objectivity, neutrality, information about avoiding bias, critical thinking, all the statements that Belgian schools and the ministries have signed up to as examples of good practice. And we resolved them into 9 indicators. For example, the number 2 is what we called anti-Israel anti-Semitism, which many people say is the latest iteration of anti-Semitism. And number 3 was looking at whether material is based upon evidence. And if it's not evidence-based, then it has no place in schools. We analyzed every sentence, phrase, map, and image. So let me give you an example of something that we found. This is perhaps one of the worst documents that we came across. It was a fiche, a compendium of material for teachers produced under the auspices of the then Minister for Overseas Development at the Directorate General of Overseas Development, about the Palestinian-Israel conflict, because teachers had said, we're struggling in our classrooms. Kids are asking us about this thing and we don't know how to teach it. Well, the document equates Hamas terrorists with the kibbutzim security teams. It takes an equivalence for the participants in that conflict. This is one of the questions that the children were asked. What are we to think of the perpetrators of terrorist acts who hide in the middle of the civilian population rather than show themselves? Do you think they lack courage? Or do you think they lack honesty? What would you do if you were in their shoes? Asking young people to put themselves in the shoes empathetically of terrorists. And this document uses inflammatory language, emotional appeals, and persistent inaccuracies. It is, in our estimation, dangerous. And it comes from the federal government. We found, page 5 of our summary document, if you're looking at the scan of that, 75% of the material analyzed was revealed by the research indicators to be anti-Semitic in some form. UNESCO put out a statement in one of their documents saying that anti-Semitic narrative tends to be simplistic, one-dimensional, promotes bias, and is not evidence-based. There are 4 characteristics. 75% of the materials contain all 4 of those characteristics of anti-Semitic material, and 98% inhibit critical thinking. Well, Sabrina talks about black and white. You're quite right, Sabrina. There's no gray in these materials at all. And because of that, we had to devise a 10th indicator on likely to promote radicalization. 60% of the material, according to the indicator, risks fueling radicalization. And they do it in simple ways. An example is a very popular video produced by the Flemish broadcaster, VRT, for children in primary school, where an expert on the Middle East crisis is asked the question, what's the conflict all about? And his answer is, well, it's Jews versus Palestinians. Jews versus Palestinians. Can you see the racism in that? Can you see how young people are being steered towards a certain way of equating Jews with Israel? In 1948, when Israel was founded, many Palestinians fled or were expelled, the experts said, but there's nothing about context. 7 Arab nations attacking Israel and telling Palestinians, or rather telling Arabs to leave so that the Jews could be wiped out and then they could return to their homes. None of this is included. And I mention this not to be an advocate for Israel, but to be an advocate for critical thinking, because only one side is heard in these materials. So what impression will children have of the Jewish state or of Jews? No wonder one of the worksheets that we analyzed on a state-funded educational website asks this question: why are the Jews not loved? Will you take part in a demonstration to support Palestinians and being against Israel? So texts without context are surely pretexts. We found pervasive, politicized, anti-Jewish, anti-Israel propaganda in the majority of those materials. Materials that play on the emotions of young people and their sentiments to reinforce hostile feelings, intolerance that leads to polarization and is likely to lead to radicalization. So in summary, there are 6 takeaways. Number 1, the Directorate General of Overseas Development and its agencies have funded biased materials via NGOs, political NGOs, and they have politicized global citizenship education as advocacy to achieve their ends as, to quote themselves, political advocacy and mobilization amongst young people, but only for one political agenda. Secondly, state funding for ideologically based content raises concerns about perpetuating prejudices and violating educational principles. Thirdly, early exposure, and Sabrina mentioned this again, in primary schools deepens polarization, intolerance, and anti-Semitism. It has no place in primary schools, looking at a complex conflict in a bipolar way. And fourthly, media must separate opinions from facts in their content and not impose their own agenda. Number 5, there's an urgent need for evaluation of content providers here in Belgium to achieve or ensure neutrality and objectivity. And finally, the regional ministers in Belgium must control and take responsibility for what is taking place in their classrooms. And the federal ministers must instigate an urgent review of state funding of political NGOs. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Nigel. I see here that we have a lot of takeaways, and I hope that our next speaker, Your Excellency Imam Muhammad Tawhidi, will give us a lot of information about that. You are known as the Imam of Peace, and it's an honor to have you here. Besides other diplomas, you have a Master of Islamic Studies and a Master's in Counterterrorism. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the Honorable Sabrina Repp, as well as His Excellency Antonio López White. I always try to memorize your name.
Spelling name too long, yes.
But thank you very, very much for hosting and for your time and attention at this time of the day. I believe this is my 4th or 5th event with Your Excellency. But I'm always honored to be in Europe and to contribute with the little that we have to make this continent a blessed, safe, secure, harmonious place for all. IMPAC, thank you very much. President Patricia, my good friend Nigel, thank you once again for the invite. And your speech about anti-Semitism reminded me to wish our brothers and sisters, or cousins, shall I say, from the Jewish faith, a blessed, good, and sweet New Year, Shana Tova, to you all. Honorable members of the European Parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Two genders, huh? I come before you today not to merely warn, but to sound an alarm. What you are witnessing across your continent is not the benign growth of civic activity. It is a patient, strategic, and increasingly dangerous campaign by a transnational Islamist network to infiltrate and subvert the institutions that hold the European democracy together. This campaign has a name, the Muslim Brotherhood. an organization designated as a terrorist entity by the majority of Muslim states. For 100 years, the Muslim Brotherhood has perfected a twofold playbook: conceal its political aims behind the language of education, charity, and civil society, then use those legal footholds to build influence within parties, unions, media, and policy-making circles. This is not accidental, and it is not by luck. It is deliberate, disciplined, and designed to exploit the very freedoms that make Europe strong. The first vector of penetration is the NGO and charity sector. Across Europe, we have seen associations and community organizations, so-called community organizations, that present as humanitarian or integration partners, but which act as conduits for ideological indoctrination, recruitment, and foreign funding. These are not isolated incidents at all. They form a pattern that is 100 years old. Organizations with front-facing social services that simultaneously push an exclusionary political narrative and cultivate activists for longer-term political projects. The result is the hollowing out of genuine civic life and the creation of parallel networks that answer to an ideological agenda rather than to European democratic norms. Second, the Brotherhood's political penetration is systematic and sophisticated. It cultivates political allies, leverages voter blocs, and lobbies institutions while presenting itself as the voice of Muslims. Again, the Muslim Brotherhood presents itself as the voice of Muslims, and their name is very problematic and racist. To call yourself the Muslim Brotherhood, these two terms are the most sacred in Islam. One, Muslim, hijacks the religion and the name of the religion, and brotherhood, you have hijacked the collective identity of Muslims regardless of your denomination, school of thought, ethnicity, gender, or background. And Christians and Jews and Muslims, we look at each other as brothers in faith. To hijack that name is not just racist, it is dangerous. And that is why you will notice that I will just refer to them as the Brotherhood, not the Muslim Brotherhood, because they are brothers in terrorism. In reality, the Muslim Brotherhood seeks to replace representative Muslim leadership with proxies who advance a political Islam agenda. When these proxies enter advisory roles, advisory councils, and I remind you all that the Muslim Brotherhood was given a platform in the White House during the era of Barack Hussein Obama and President Biden. They were advisors under the organization by the name of CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, that is designated as a terrorist entity by the UAE. For them to become advisors to the United States president is the ultimate victory for the Muslim Brotherhood. When these proxies enter advisory roles, as I said, advisory councils, or become regular interlocutors for governments and EU bodies, they tilt policy debates toward positions that erode secular governance, freedom of expression, and equal citizenship. This is influence, not integration. It is political warfare under the cover of democracy. Third, the Brotherhood leverages labor governments and unions to legitimize itself by embedding operatives within grassroots campaigns on workplace rights, education, again. If you take a look at universities today, the leading professors that are being funded by governments that rely on the Muslim Brotherhood as its front militia, without mentioning any names. It is very important that we take note that not every Muslim academic is genuinely acting for the sake of Islamic academia and for the sake of the humanities within universities. the books and the studies they publish and they push forward, if they smell Muslim Brotherhood, then they are Muslim Brotherhood. By embedding operatives within grassroots campaigns on workplace rights, education, or anti-racism causes, it gains moral credibility and shields its ideology under the cloak of social justice. Can you imagine that? Hamas's mother organization talking about diversity and social justice. Once inside your organizations, dear members of parliament, these actors reframe public debates, mobilize sympathizers, and pressure institutions to accept leaders and narratives that are hostile to pluralism. What do I mean? The regime in Iran has a dictator sitting on top, Ali Khamenei. Can you believe that Ali Khamenei was talking to the students protesting in American and Canadian universities, direct line of communication via social media? Ali Khamenei can be speaking to your students and your children too, directly. There needs to be measures, and I'm not speaking about sanctions, I'm not a politician, but there needs to be security measures towards terrorist dictators who is the head of the IRGC that you mentioned, Your Excellency, to be communicating with European citizens directly through a tweet or a post on X, as they call it today. So they pressure institutions to accept these leaders and narratives that are hostile to pluralism. This is an exploitation of social solidarity to mask an authoritarian blueprint. Fourth, control of narrative is central to the Brotherhood's success. Satellite channels, social platforms, and sympathetic media outlets amplify grievances, narratives, and stoke identity politics and sanitize extremist positions under more palatable language. The goal is to normalize political Islam and delegitimize those who resist it. When media becomes a weapon, it shapes policy by bending public opinion, not by transparent debate. We must also be blunt about the security dimension. The Muslim Brotherhood, the Brotherhood, is not a monolith. It has branches. I want you to pay careful attention to this. They have branches, sister organizations, affiliates, and offshoots. You designate one, you ban one, like a mushroom, they rise with another logo, another name. And that's why we need to thank the UAE for highlighting the terrorist entities, 8 that were designated in the United Kingdom, just next door. It's a real issue when it comes to the Muslim Brotherhood escaping terrorist designation and sanctions. Some offshoots have resorted to violence. Many governments around the world treat aspects of this network as a security threat. Several states have banned, restricted, or labeled branches as illegal or extremist. And lawmakers in multiple democracies have formally debated designation and listing. That is very cute, that you would like to have a debate whether or not to designate a terrorist entity. What are you waiting for? You see, democracy is beautiful. However, when a terrorist is in broad daylight using democracy to weaken democracy, then the dignity and the honor that one has for their own country and their children needs to step in. And that is when you already have the laws in place, by the way. It's a matter of enacting on these laws and applying them on the extremists when required. These are not trivial matters, where intelligence and prosecution have exposed links between actors in civic organizations and violent actors or illicit financing. The evidence has compelled national action. You ignore that reality at your own peril. Let us be clear. This is not an argument against Muslims or against civic associations that do vital work. It is an argument against an organized political project that weaponizes religion to advance an illiberal agenda. Europe must protect its pluralism while cutting off space for organizations that operate hypocritically to undermine the very freedoms that allow them to grow. What does this mean in practice? I propose a decisive European response with 3 clear pillars. Firstly, require full transparency for organizations that receive public funds or represent communities to EU institutions. Condition European and national funding on audited, traceable finances and prohibitions on foreign political funding that mask ideological agendas. Commission a Europe-wide inquiry to map brotherhood networks. Very, very necessary. As I speak now, you're all imagining, what could this look like? I can tell you what it looks like. Very sophisticated, very complex. You're talking about a community that was here first, before the good people arrived. You're talking about the most lavish mosques and the biggest minarets, and Islamist, extremist, pro-terrorists who enter this parliament in LV and Gucci and Prada and suits and ties. They no longer look like me, right? That was a joke, by the way. You were supposed to laugh. Very important that we can identify them. Now, where evidence of illicit activity, support for violence, or subversive political aims exists, member states must act swiftly and in coordination. 3, support and resource representative independent Muslim organizations that unequivocally reject political Islamism, promote civic education that strengthens integration and civic loyalty rather than identity segregation. On the 16th of this month, I had the absolute pleasure of participating on a panel held in an event organized by Trends Research and Advisory on political Islam. That was the 5th annual event. And I invite you all to join these annual events in Abu Dhabi. Furthermore, Trends Research and Advisory has the only encyclopedia that is comprehensive and academic on the Muslim Brotherhood. And I believe now it's reaching 9 volumes, if I'm right. 9 volumes in multiple languages, rich in resources, a must for every academic library. And if the European Parliament can host that encyclopedia, I'm sure that Trends can arrange that for you. It covers every threat within the Muslim Brotherhood, including education. Honorable members, complacency is no longer an option. The Brotherhood's method is patience and concealment. Patience and concealment. You have to run for elections, honorable members of Parliament. The Muslim Brotherhood don't have to think about 4-year terms, 8-year terms. They think in 50-year terms, if not 100-year terms. The seed that was planted 100 years ago is now destroying Europe and has already destroyed many democratic societies. Its goal is influence and transformation. If you allow unchecked penetration of your NGOs, unions, education, media, and political institutions, you will awake to a Europe where your own laws and liberties are reshaped from within. That is not a prophecy, it is a preventable trajectory. I ask this Parliament to treat this issue not as a partisan slogan, but as a cross-party institutional security priority. Commission the mapping, tighten transparency rules, and uphold the principle that access to your institutions must be matched by loyalty to democratic values. Let us be unequivocal. Europe will not be hollowed out from within. You will defend the equal rights of all citizens to live free from the imposition of an authoritarian religious project and against the dark and dangerous agendas of the Muslim Brotherhood and the regime in Iran. And we stand with you in that. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Imam. You were very clear of how they work and what we have to do. Thank you for that. Our next speaker will be, and I'm sorry if I pronounce your name a bit badly, Gaztelu. Mr. Francisco Gaztelu Mezquiriz. Well, that was bad, huh? Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are running a little bit out of time, so if each speaker could really stick to the few minutes that they have been appointed, that would be very nice for the other ones. Thank you very much.
After the Honorable Imam. Very good.
I think you have a lot of, yeah, I see you are well trained. No, I think it was very interesting as equally as all the interventions here. And I think it's very important, of course, to identify the threats and the risks. And I think you have done it very eloquently. I think there have been other speeches have been very passionate and I think interesting as well, inspiring. My role is a little bit to put the more institutional benchmarks, a little bit more the action that the institution, the commission in this case, is doing. Because I really believe that hard work in the positive direction can indeed avoid and prevent some of the risks I think the man has been referring to. I really believe that we continue European institutions working hard, cohesively, in a positive trajectory. I think we can counteract all these threats. You can maybe call me a little bit naive or optimist, but I really believe with optimism, hard work, we can get there. Just let me tell you a little bit of the things that the Commissioner is going to do over the next months. We have, as you know, anti-radicalization agenda, which is part of the counter-terrorist agenda, that will actually be renewed by the end of 2025. So I think it's a document that we need to pay attention to because, of course, this anti-radicalization strategy will be revisited and revamped as part of this communication. There we look at all aspects of radicalization and all levels, at community level, at prisons level, at trying to empowerment as well, empower the communities, civil society at large, and national authorities, local authorities. This is something that should be part of an intensive debate as well in the Parliament, and I think will be interesting as well to use that opportunity to see how to fight as well all elements of radicalization. A new document that for me is going to set the pace, for the next years to come, decades to come, that the Commission will be adopting soon, or at least the contribution of the Commission to this will be adopted soon. The 16th of October will be the Pact for the Mediterranean. And I'm mentioning the Pact for the Mediterranean because this focuses a lot on young people, on providing opportunities for young people. In the area of education, education will be a major element of one of the pillars, which is the people pillars of the Pact. We're going to look as well at creating, as I said, job opportunities, economic possibilities for young people on both sides of the Mediterranean. I really believe that the Pact will be a new foundational, a document for both sides of the Mediterranean, believing that we both together can really make of the Mediterranean, and they include as well the Gulf countries, because they will also be contributing to the Pact, and the Arab Peninsula as well countries, to really transform the Mediterranean into a force of positivity, prosperity, development, and then make sure that we become really, as we used to be in the past, a center, for construction and prosperity for the rest of the world. So they are very grand and ambitious. As I said, young people, support of young people will be a central element of the Pact. Cultural cooperation, overcoming distrust, so ensuring mutual trust, understanding among our people, and to combat the root causes of radicalization and violent extremism are going to be main elements as well of the Pact. The Pact will give more room to cultural dialogue as part of the people-to-people relations. It will, among its initiatives, also develop what we call the Mediterranean University. That will be building up on the existing alliances, but trying to really as well be the pole of a new educational system in the Mediterranean over time. The area of education, but also the area of investing in ensuring the independence of the media literacy, including fact-checking, strategic communication, and all the aspects of justice, security sector reform, and community-based prevention will also be elements that we'll continue investing in. With this, I don't want to say that, of course, this is enough. I don't want to say that this is perfectly done. I know there are many more things that can be improved, that can be done, in addition to what the Commission is doing for the moment. What I'm trying to say is that there is an agenda of work there that is continually incremental, continually increasing in terms of financial means, as well focus and interest given by the Commission together with the other institutions, Parliament and Council. Just a few examples of projects, that we have been supporting, which I think may as well help understand kind of the more specific, action that we have carried out, to date is, for example, the promotion of interreligious dialogue, implemented by the Dominican Institute for Oriental Studies and the Azhar University, an observatory for combating extremism. This action provides academic tools for students and scholars in Islamic studies in Egypt to help them fight in religious extremism. All the examples, the knowledge hub on prevention of radicalization, which is a major initiative as well in radicalization or anti-radicalization, working on the interrelation between foreign information manipulation and interference and radicalization in the Middle East and North Africa region. I will finish just with a few other examples. We're also providing support to independent media in the region and dialogue with the EU media outlets. We're also engaging with the Anna Lindh Foundation and projects that are designed to support youth contribution, young people contribution to parliaments and to parliamentary assemblies. We're working with youth delegations to work on consultative boards that intend to reinforce this democratic dialogue. We are supporting civil society at large. There, as you know, in many areas, we have actually implemented strong scrutiny to ensure there is no infiltration of radicalization threats in a number of projects. You are talking about the conditioning aid. This is something which is much more sophisticated and easier to say than to do. Because most of the support we're providing to our partner countries, for you to know, is something I've been looking into personally as well, is obviously to promote joint interest. So not so much the benefits of our recipient countries, so to say, but more as well the interest of the EU interest in these countries. So therefore, it's a little bit counterintuitive as well sometimes to think of conditional aid, which is actually supporting the EU interest more than our partners' interest. I'm thinking about investments, for example. I'm thinking about trade matters and things like that. Most of the support goes in this direction because there has been a transformation and evolution. I finish now. Transformation and evolution, in the type of aid, that the European Union is providing to these countries. So as I said, more can be done. Many ideas have been raised here. I think that, of course, I take note of. We'll be looking at how to use them to improve our, financing, funding, and as well our cooperation with these countries from the Commission point of view. And as I said, there are two documents coming forward to the Parliament very soon, so that there will be as well good, mechanisms to engage, actually to improve in these areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You give us hope in this troubled world. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Shannon Seban. She's a French politician, activist, and author renowned for her advocacy against anti-Semitism and discrimination. Thank you for clarifying us how anti-Semitism is a powerful vector for radicalization. Can I ask you to be brief? Thank you very much.
Of course. Thanks a lot, Patricia, for your invitation. Thanks a lot, Nigel, as well. I'm really happy to be here today with you all. Thank you to MEPs Sabrina Repp and Antonio López-Istúriz White for their participation tonight. It's really important to have some MEPs involved in this fight against radicalization, extremism, and anti-Semitism, especially across Europe, where we all know that the threat is quite high. And it's always a pleasure to meet with my friend Imam Tawhidi, Imam Muhammad Tawhidi, Imam of Peace. I'm deeply grateful for your commitment, for being so brave, and for telling the truth all around the world. So I just would like all of us to thank him once again, because he's doing a wonderful job, and this time period is really brave from him to be able to speak this way and to tell the truth. So thanks a lot for being here. So I will stick to the instruction of Patricia, and I will try to be quite brief. There is definitely a link between anti-Semitism and radicalization. And I will tell you an experience which is coming from the ground. Last year, 1 month ago, I was running for the European Parliament. And after that, I was running for the French Parliament in France. And I was facing Mathilde Panot. Mathilde Panot is the leader of La France Insoumise, so from the far left in France at the National Assembly. And during this political campaign, which was quite brief, to be honest, like only 2 weeks in order to try to win this area, after 1 week of campaign, I have been attacked in the streets by some of the people who were working with Mathilde Panot under the the shouts of "move from here, dirty Zionist." So what's happening at that time period? Of course, I have been put under police protection, unfortunately, but what happened is that because I am Jewish, because my name is Shannon Seban, I was definitely deemed that I was a support of what was going on in Gaza. So that was a support of Benjamin Netanyahu, that I was supporting a genocide, and that I was a killer of baby. That was basically what they told me about. So of course, I decided to file a complaint. But what I am telling you about this story is not just to tell you about the story, is to bring a message, is that that was basically radicalization and extremism. In the area where I am elected, in Rosny-sous-Bois in Seine-Saint-Denis, 40% of the population is aged less than 25 years old. And what I can see on a daily basis is that hate, radicalization, extremism is coming from ignorance. And all the groups that are now trying to radicalize and to use radicalization, whether they are political or religious, they are playing with ignorance, and especially among youth. And what's urgent at the moment is, of course, to play and to act on education. And I'm really happy that you guys decided to address the topic of radicalization and extremism through the specific topic of youth, because they are the future generation. They will build the future. And what's really urgent is, of course, to act on education, to be very clear in order to unveil cliché and stereotype, and also to reconsider the commitment into politics. We now have the feeling, and I'm telling you this from France, but of course across Europe and across all around the world, that when you would like to be involved into politics, you have to be extremist. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense, and you are kind of seen as someone who is naive and disconnected from the reality. But of course, there is a path for peace, there is a path for tolerance, there is a path for coexistence, there is a path in order to fight anti-Semitism, but also any kind of racism and discrimination in the middle. But to this, we need to be brave. We need to try to make our education stronger. We need to take like deep measure when it comes to our legal system. And of course, we are speaking about education, but we need also to be very firm and very strict when it comes to the legal systems. I can see it in France, unfortunately. Anti-Zionism is now becoming the new form of anti-Semitism at some point. When you deny the very right of a people to have his own territory, for me, is the red line, is like the red line is crossed, and it's a kind of anti-Semitism. And we need also to try to make our legal system all across the world, all over the world, to be adapted to this kind of new threats. And I mean, just thank you. And what's really important to me at the end is also to support interfaith dialogue. On my daily life, when I'm trying to fight anti-Semitism, I'm going in schools, I'm going to give conferences and speeches. But to me, the most important is this, is interfaith dialogue. I'm Jewish, you are not, and we are always promoting peace and trying to make people understand that there are no differences between Jewish, Muslims, and Christians. To me, this is the key for peace, especially in the national and international situation that we know. I know it's difficult. And you know, those who are using radicalization and extremism in order to gain voters among a certain community, and I can say it in France, they are not clever at all. They are stupid, basically. And I know it's difficult, but we need to denounce again and again. They would not win, but we need to be united in this fight. So anti-Semitism, of course, today is a nightmare, but it's the same as any kind of racism and discrimination. And in order to bring peace, we need to denounce, to punish, to prevent through education, and everything will be okay. Let's bring hope. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shannon. Indeed, I think I take away from you is that stereotypes can fuel any racism, particularly anti-Semitism, and interreligious dialogue is the key word as education. Thank you very much. This means that I can now go to our next speaker, who is Eric van den Bergen, and he is a teacher who promotes dialogue and mutual respect through critical thinking, and even to counter radicalization. Please, Eric, tell us more about it.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Good evening, honorable members, distinguished guests. I am Erik van den Bergen, an educator and a local politician from Brussels, shaped on the vibrant streets of Molenbeek. Yes, Molenbeek. As a child, I played football with Jewish, Muslim, Christian, and atheist friends, bound by laughter, not by labels. My grandmother's Judaism, my father's Christianity, and the hospitality I found in the homes of my Muslim friends gave me a deep connection to all three Abrahamic faiths and to the power of our shared humanity. Today, I draw on these roots to confront a pressing challenge, the radicalization of Europe's youth. Freedom of identity. Polarization fractures our communities. Radicalization fuels hatred, and extremism turns toxic ideas into violent acts. We must act before such a division destroys us all. Freedom of speech is the cornerstone of European democracy. But let us be clear, incitement to violence or hatred has no place within it. We should not teach our youth to erase themselves in the name of harmony. Instead, we must encourage them to search, to question, to embrace their identity, and to grow into individuals who can stand tall in a society that values both unity and difference. The goal is not sameness. The goal is mutual respect. A world where I can honor who you are without losing who I am. Teaching our democratic values means teaching equality between men and women, freedom of religion, freedom of political opinion, etc. What I have seen in Brussels, nearly 55 years in Brussels, I've seen young people flirt with extremist ideologies, from rigid interpretations of faith to anti-democratic rhetoric. One young man, eyes blazing with defiance, told me, "Sir, democracy is just a Western trick." I did not silence him. I invited him to debate, to question, to listen. Months later, he led an interfaith project, bringing pupils together to discuss their shared values. What transformed him? Not the punishment or the investigation, but dialogue, trust, and education. Across Europe, I hear similar cries from young people searching for their identity. By engaging them, we guide them towards inclusion and not division. My approach, my simple approach to countering radicalism, rests on two pillars: critical thinking and ethics. First, I teach pupils to think critically. They analyze extremist propaganda, videos, posts, slogans, learning to uncover the flaws in its logic. This empowers them to resist indoctrination and to engage constructively in diverse societies. In doing so, we foster informed, resilient citizens who uphold Europe's values of freedom, tolerance, and mutual respect. Second, I teach ethics, the conviction that responsibility begins with recognizing the humanity of the other. Whether Muslim, Jewish, Christian, atheist, Hindu, Buddhist, Sikh, etc. Every encounter becomes a lesson in dignity. But to scale this, we need teachers trained to foster these skills, embedding critical thinking and ethical dialogue in every classroom. Europe stands at the crossroads: fear or courage. We must build schools where pupils discover purpose, develop moral compasses, and contribute to a shared European identity. An identity that thrives on our multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and multilinguistic diversity, but only if we nurture dialogue. Radicalism that rejects European openness and inclusivity breeds polarization, not progress. To counter it, we need 4 things. Schools that prioritize dialogue over rote learning, creating spaces for difficult conversations that challenge misinformation and prejudice. Teachers equipped not to avoid conflict, but to navigate it, trained to recognize and address radicalization early. Curricula enriched with philosophy, ethics, cultural literacy, helping pupils understand themselves and also the others. And last but not least, intercultural exchanges that broaden perspectives and build empathy. These are not luxuries, they are necessities. Without them, we risk losing our youth to division. Let me close with a short story, and I will respect the timing, Patricia. A quiet girl in my class, her hijab framing a shy smile, once whispered, "Sir, on the street, people look at me like I don't belong." I asked, "Do you feel you belong here?" She nodded. In this classroom, yes. That is where de-radicalization begins, in relationships, in recognition, in dignity. Honorable members, I appeal to you, those with the power to shape Europe's schools and policies. Invest in our youth. Invest in dialogue that empowers critical minds. Invest in education that builds a diverse, democratic Europe. Our young people are ready to lead. Let us equip them with the means to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. I would like to have a lot of clones like you, because I have not the impression that all over the country we have teachers of your quality. Our next speaker is Mohamed Webe, of Palestinian descent. You now conduct conferences on de-radicalization and critical thinking in schools. You are going to explain how constructive dialogue can counter radicalization in schools, and we are very curious to hear your methods. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Good evening, everyone. Today I will explain the method that we used on the school of my director, Eric. So at the 7th of October, I think, because also I'm a Palestinian, I was thinking, so in schools we need to put a structure to get all what will happen after the 7th also of October, not just the 7th of October, what we will do with this structure to take everything under control. So we start in classes with students by giving a historical context and to explain, to have a basic foundation to start to going up to the following discussion that we will do in the classes. We did it very briefly. We were not giving Islamic courses, but just a historical context and little bit Islam, because the most of the students at schools, they are Muslims. So the Islam we use it is to show people and students, that also teachers, that we have love and peace in Islam, not what we see on TV and what people want to see, to show you on TV. We give them also the floor. Why? Why we are giving the sessions? it's not just I'm speaking there and they come to listen to me. No, we were going to a level higher and give them the floor to explain from where they get this video, the sources of these videos, that I can work on it, to know from where they go, who is speaking to them, and how those people they speaking and showing those children or students at school, to show them, you need to understand that, and I want to know that, from where they get it, the source of all the problems. Furthermore, we analyze the videos, pictures, even what they bring with it at school, and we try to show them that what you have in hand and what you are seeing is not what your Islam telling you to do or what you need to know. So for me, it was also easy to get a feedback system in this structure, not just to speak about things and give information and get information, but also a self-reflection to me, how I did it by posing questions on the end of the sessions with students to show me if they are understanding what I'm telling them, or maybe my teacher, the teacher they are helping me. Are they understanding what we try to explain? Because you can explain to someone, okay, we have this video and it comes from this side and those people thinking like that, and that is not the truth. But you need also to put this feedback system, why? Because this feedback system is very important for me, for the teachers and for the student, that we know, are we on level, top or not? And are we getting this definitive object that we need and we want to approach? So I pose questions to the students, and it is not, like I said, only listening to me, but it's also to put them on active thinking and also showing making a mistake, it can, but it's not the problem to make a mistake, it's to get this mistake and continue with this mistake. This is the problem also. Furthermore, sometimes you have in schools also weak students. They don't want to speak, but they have ideas. And maybe out of school they work with it. So I also, after school, I did some sessions, even it's cost me the time I did it, to just even sometimes with their parents, even if it is possible, and to build a better future for our students. I hope that we not just having me, but others in the country and over whole Europe. And that is the reason also why we started with a name, Transformational Teaching and Dialogue, because we are doing a transformation. This transformation needs teaching, and this teaching, we do it by a dialogue and not by other things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Muhammad. If I listen to Eric and you, I understand that people of goodwill exist. We hope that there are more of them, but I think, as our Imam has said to us, actions have to be taken at another level. And we hope that politicians will hear you. Our next speaker will be Sara Al-Hosani. You are an Emirati political analyst and founder of UAETIA, a strategic platform at the intersection of AI, politics, and psychology. Thank you so much for your presence at this conference. You are going to speak to us about digital diplomacy as a tool to build resilience against extremism. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Patricia, and Your Excellency, Antonio Lopez. Honorable members, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to address you today. I do not stand solely as a researcher or an expert in communication strategies. I speak to you as part of the generation that we are trying to protect. As a young woman who has witnessed firsthand how dangerous the digital space can be when it falls into the wrong hands. And as someone directly involved in shaping responsible media narratives, this perspective allows me to see clearly how extremist ideas spread, and more importantly, how they can be stopped. We face a growing global challenge, the deliberate targeting of young people by extremist groups operating across borders. These groups use digital platforms to spread hatred, misinformation, and division. And as His Excellency Antonio also mentioned, they seek out young people who feel isolated, overlooked, or frustrated, and turn that frustration into hostility. I remember meeting a teenager during one of my visits. Smart, curious, but increasingly withdrawn from the world around her. She showed me her phone, a constant stream of content. Some of it is inspiring, but much of it designed to provoke anger, fear, or isolation. Her feed did not care who she was. It did not recognize whether she was Arab or European. It did not know if she lived in Paris, Dubai, or Florida. The algorithm did not care. It just pushed what got clicks. And unfortunately, what got clicks was hate. This is exactly what I warn about in my upcoming book, where I explore how social platforms manipulate attention and emotion. I introduce a concept I call fake dopamine, the short-term emotional spikes that algorithms use to keep young people scrolling, reacting, and slowly accepting distorted views of reality. If we want to build stable, resilient societies, we must start by safeguarding the minds of young people. And if we want to build a stable, resilient society, let me briefly share how my country, the United Arab Emirates, has responded to this threat with a proactive strategy. First, the Sawab Center, a joint US-UAE initiative, counters extremist narratives in real time in multiple languages. Its campaigns have reached over 50 million engagements, promoting tolerance and coexistence rooted in the UAE's national values. Second, we have the Hidayah Center. Through its international training program, it has equipped over 14,000 experts from more than 100 countries. These practitioners are trained to recognize early signs of extremism in schools, communities, and digital spaces. And through my own work at R11AI, I lead a program focused on monitoring radical trends using AI technology, because we cannot deny that AI plays a defining role in shaping what people see, believe, and act on. In Europe, the challenge takes a different shape. Some extremist voices operate with legal boundaries, presenting themselves as activism or free speech. Meanwhile, many young people feel disconnected from the institutions that once gave them a sense of identity. When they go online looking for answers, they often find simplified, angry messages and not real solutions. This is where action is urgently needed, not just from governments, but across education, civil society, and media. So how can Europe respond to this effectively? I offer 3 strategic solutions. First, develop unified messaging platforms across member states. We must deliver clear, fact-based, values-driven content, not only during crises, but as part of long-term engagement with the youth. Second, integrate digital literacy into education systems. Young people must be taught to question what they see online, to recognize manipulation, and to build respectful dialogue. And third, support youth-led initiatives, which in my view is the most important. Young people trust each other more than they trust institutions. Give them the space to lead and support them with tools and trust. In the UAE, youth councils offer real platforms for dialogue, education, and leadership. They've proven effective in building informed, resilient young minds. This challenge will not be solved by policy alone. It requires consistency, it requires collaboration, it requires care. Digital platforms are not the enemy, but silence is. And if we leave a vacuum, others will fill it. And unfortunately, they are good at that. As Audrey Azoulay, Director General of UNESCO, once said, when young people are given the chance to learn, to speak, to create, they do not choose violence, they choose hope. And that is the responsibility that we all share, because this is not a regional issue. It is a borderless challenge, one that requires more than shared policies. It demands shared values. In every digital space, in every classroom, we are either building resilience or leaving the door open to radicalization. So I leave you with one question. Who do we want shaping the minds of our next generation? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. That was very helpful for us, your insight, and I cannot be more agreeing with you. Our next speaker is Saïd Oujibou. You are a socio-religious mediator, urban prevention consultant, and have been working for over 20 years to build bridges between cultural, religious, and institutional communities. Tell us more about how radicalization appears and develops in France. Thank you.
Voilà, bonsoir à chacun, bonsoir à chacune, shalom alaikum. Très heureux d'intervenir ce soir sur cette question de la radicalisation et de l'extrémisme violent. I'm sorry about my English is not perfect. I speak in French. Je voudrais simplement dire que la parole a beaucoup plus de force que la violence. Le 13 novembre 2015, j'ai été confronté à la plus grande difficulté de ma vie, puisque un des terroristes du Bataclan, Mostefaï Ismaël Omar, qui s'est explosé au Bataclan, est un membre de ma famille. Donc je me suis retrouvé à la cellule antiterroriste, interrogé pendant 2 heures, puisque j'étais en médiation à même pas 1000 mètres du Bataclan. Et ma famille a été arrêtée quasiment pendant 1 semaine et j'ai dû faire tout un travail sur la justice réparatrice pendant 1 an. Je rejette foncièrement, intégralement ce soir, cette vision simpliste et binaire de la radicalisation pour ne pas parler d'extrémisme violent. Se concentrer ce soir uniquement sur une seule perspective pour simplifier l'excès de questions profondément complexes, il nous faut véritablement parler du pourquoi, mais aussi du comment. Les raisons, elles sont multiples ce soir. Elles englobent bien sûr une dimension historique, politique, socio-économique, identitaire, mais en même temps, elles sont aussi religieuses. L'extrémisme violent découle de multiples causes, bien que des interprétations dogmatiques puissent l'alimenter, poussant les individus vers des mentalités sectaires, violentes et clivantes. On doit véritablement examiner, peut-être réexaminer ces divers facteurs pour comprendre les chemins qui mènent à une telle posture radicale. Il y a en France un déficit d'histoire et un excès de mémoire. Les événements historiques du 11 septembre, en passant par le 13 novembre, jusqu'aux attaques odieuses du Hamas le 7 octobre, nous montrent à quel point nous sommes dans l'urgence. Sur la France, les politiques d'intégration et immigration incohérentes ont approfondi les sentiments d'abandon. Ils ont aggravé les fractures sociales, générationnelles. Et cette exclusion, combinée en même temps l'insécurité socio-économique, a favorisé un repli identitaire. Le rejet, exacerbé aussi par les tensions autour de la laïcité, perçue par certains comme une contrainte, le malaise de nos banlieues, où aujourd'hui nous avons perdu ces territoires, je dirais, de la République, les conflits mondiaux, la guerre du Golfe, les interventions occidentales, Irak, Libye, Syrie, et le sempiternel conflit israélo-palestinien, où on sent cette identification à la fois politique et sociale. En répétant ces mêmes erreurs sans assumer la responsabilité politique, nous récoltons finalement les terroristes que nous méritons. Lorsque les jeunes se sentent humiliés, rejetés, ostracisés, ils recherchent bien sûr une idéologie qui légitime leur protestation et la violence contre l'environnement qu'ils blâment pour leur aliénation. On parle souvent et on s'en prend bien sûr aux conséquences sans aller dans les causes profondes. On ne peut pas accepter les affirmations rassurantes aujourd'hui de certaines autorités politiques et religieuses selon lesquelles l'islamisme n'a aucun rapport avec l'islam. Ce déni est intenable. La réalité, elle est crue. Certains textes coraniques, sourates et hadiths, servent de justification directe pour les extrémistes qui s'appuient sur des références religieuses pour légitimer les appels à la guerre, à la haine contre les infidèles. La violence, parfois perpétrée par des pays comme le wahhabisme d'Arabie saoudite, les fréristes en Égypte, que ce soit la Turquie, le Pakistan, l'Afghanistan, ils ont activement diffusé cet islamisme, finançant des réseaux exportant des prédicateurs radicaux. Des organisations comme le Hamas, comme les frères musulmans, permettez-moi de vous dire ce soir qu'ils ne tirent pas leur source des fables de La Fontaine. Il y a une base qui est idéologique, il y a un socle. Sans vous heurter, sans vous choquer, tout en vous respectant. Certains, aujourd'hui, nous sommes face à une réalité où certains jeunes sont violés mentalement, psychologiquement. Ils oublient leur conscience, ils sont capables de n'importe quelle folie, mais d'où ils tirent leur source. Les crimes commis au nom d'Allah ne sont pas fictifs. Décapitation, mutilation, crucifixion, et sans parler des jeunes filles yézidis vendues comme un butin sexuel. Ces atrocités revendiquées comme des applications tirent leur source d'un livre. Comment on peut fermer, je dirais, les yeux aujourd'hui et répéter les mêmes erreurs? La question cruciale, c'est que font finalement les musulmans pour reprendre leur religion? Sont-ils prêts à reconnaître que certains textes sont instrumentalisés idéologiquement? Sont-ils préparés pour un mea culpa collectif, une réforme réelle, profonde, une relecture courageuse des textes coraniques? Nous avons besoin d'une réforme théologique. Les appels solennels à la paix sont insuffisants, je les ai entendus ce soir. Nous devons aborder les passages problématiques du Coran, de la Sunna, des hadiths, exploités pour justifier les crimes. Sans ce courage critique, théologique, l'islam restera otage de ceux qui l'instrumentalisent et ces textes de violence qui vont avec. L'Occident, lui aussi, doit mettre fin à son silence coupable. Les islamo-gauchistes en France ne servent pas le pays. Il y a là chez la communauté musulmane, juste pour certains, un potentiel électoral. Nous ne pouvons pas oublier les crimes qui sont perpétrés par les islamistes, ni ignorer la réalité sous le couvert d'un multiculturalisme superficiel. Une véritable réforme doit venir de l'intérieur de l'islam à travers un examen intrépide des dogmes, de leurs origines historiques et de leurs usages contemporains. La question centrale, elle demeure. D'où viennent ces dogmes? Et sur quoi ils reposent? Il y a des textes religieux comme base idéologique. La réponse, elle est claire. Des textes spécifiques du Coran, des hadiths, de la charia, qui constituent le fondement. Reconnaître ces réalités est la première étape pour nous libérer justement de l'extrémisme violent, plutôt que de trouver toutes sortes de solutions finalement qui n'aboutissent pas depuis, je dirais, quelques années. La sourate 9, le verset 5, celle de l'épée, Sif, nous dit textuellement « Tuez les polythéistes, où que vous les trouviez, capturez-les, assiégez-les et guettez-les dans chaque embuscade. » Les djihadistes, justement, citent cela pour justifier le meurtre des non-musulmans, souvent en ignorant son contexte du 7e siècle lié à un conflit spécifique. Sourate 9, verset 29. Combattez ceux qui ne croient pas en Allah jusqu'à qu'ils payent la jizya en toute humilité. Utilisé pour légitimer la domination sur les chrétiens et les juifs, imposant un statut de dimitude aujourd'hui. La sourate 47, verset 4. Lorsque vous rencontrez ceux qui ont mécru, frappez leur cou. Les extrémistes utilisent cela comme base religieuse pour les décapitations. Sourate 9, verset 111. Allah a acheté aux croyants leurs personnes et leurs biens en échange du paradis. Ils combattent sur le chemin d'Allah, ils tuent et sont tués. Cela glorifie les kamikazes et les attaques promettant une récompense soi-disant divine. Hadith al-Bukhari. J'ai reçu l'ordre de combattre les gens jusqu'à ce qu'ils disent qu'il n'y a pas de Dieu, invité pour légitimer la guerre contre les sociétés non musulmanes, et un hadith, le dernier, sur les femmes captives. On appelle ça le Sahih al-Muslim. Le prophète aurait approuvé des relations avec des prisonnières, une référence utilisée par Daesh pour justifier l'esclavage sexuel des femmes yézidis. Il y a là une nécessité de réforme et une responsabilité en même temps collective. Ces atrocités, ces décapitations, crucifixions, viols, esclavage sexuel sont enracinés dans des textes existants. La question aujourd'hui n'est plus de savoir ce soir si l'islamisme est lié à l'islam, mais quand les musulmans vont affronter ces passages problématiques avec honnêteté, avec vérité. Il faut qu'il y ait une réforme essentielle qui nécessite véritablement un mea culpa collectif, une lecture critique et contextuelle du Coran, avec des hadiths et une distinction claire entre la foi spirituelle et les prescriptions violentes du contexte guerrier qui date du 7e siècle. Sans cette réforme, les islamistes continueront à brandir des versets comme justification, l'Occident silencieux, la peur. On ne pêche plus par peur en France, mais aussi par intérêt économique et pas que par ignorance. C'est facile de nous crier islamophobie. C'est bien beau de culpabiliser, je dirais, l'Occident, mais arrivé à un moment, il faut arrêter de se soustraire, il faut arrêter de se dédouaner et il faut arrêter de dire quand ce n'est pas la faute des Américains, c'est la faute des Juifs, et quand le Juif n'est pas là, ben c'est la faute de ta femme, et quand ce n'est pas la faute de ta femme, c'est la faute du chien. Soyons sérieux ce soir. On tourne en rond maintenant depuis quelques années. Il n'y a pas de responsabilité islamique ou de questionnement interne. Les récits de victimisation, ça suffit. Ça mène à une évasion sans fin. En France, être musulman, en France, ne suffit pas. Il faut être pas en France, il faut être de France. J'aime la France. Ce pays m'a appris à lire, à écrire, il m'a aimé. Et certains se comportent en France, en Belgique, en Europe, ils ne se comporteraient pas de la même manière dans leur pays d'origine. Et je suis fatigué de cette France qui écrit l'histoire avec une gomme. Cet héritage en France, il est aussi judéo-chrétien. L'intégration, contrairement à la simple insertion, vivre côte à côte, on nous parle du vivre ensemble, on nous endort avec le vivre ensemble, il y a aussi le libre ensemble. Ça exige d'embrasser l'héritage, l'histoire d'un pays, les principes républicains français. La France, bien sûr, a des devoirs envers ses citoyens, mais les résidents ont des devoirs aussi envers la France. Bénéficier sans contribuer est intenable dans cette critique, et ça peut peut-être déranger certains. Pourquoi exempter? Pourquoi soustraire? Pourquoi dédouaner les musulmans? On doit questionner cet héritage, cet être même, je dirais, fidèle à l'esprit interrogateur du Coran, adaptable à la raison, à la réalité moderne. Les racines psychologiques de la radicalisation intensifiée par les fractures sociales rendent les individus vulnérables à la manipulation par des régimes exploitant l'extrémisme pour le pouvoir. Certains dictateurs arabes vous disent « oui, travaillez avec moi, ça va vous éviter le djihadisme ». Et là, on se rend compte à quel point on nous manipule et on élude quelquefois la responsabilité. La radicalisation, c'est ni un destin, ce n'est pas une fatalité ce soir, c'est ni une simple conséquence de la pauvreté ou de certains profils qui, soi-disant, sont fragiles psychologiquement, ils n'ont pas compris l'islam. Ils l'ont compris mieux que certains. C'est une idéologie qui exploite la vulnérabilité avec des textes religieux précis et des stratégies politiques. Affronter cette vérité sans excuse, c'est la première responsabilité dans la radicalisation et ça sera la première lutte pour aider la polarisation et aider notre jeunesse qui est en déshérence dans nos quartiers paupérisés et fragilisés. Merci.
Merci, Said. For those who do not understand French, there's a QR code more or less of what he has said tonight. So if you want on the program, you can read it.
Can I just say I'm very glad he doesn't speak English. I will have serious competition with this guy. Very glad. Thank you.
Our next speaker is now Gülden Hennemann. She is a political scientist specializing in extremism, radicalization prevention, and counterterrorism, focusing on Islam, left and right-wing extremism, and prison radicalization. You can explain us, Gülden, what is actually the situation in Germany. Thank you very much.
So I remember the times of Germany, 80s, 90s, how it was, and so the insights, my expertise, is that
I'd like to stand. Is that okay?
Nobody can see you. Well,
No, I think it's respectful to stand. So the insights I have on my expertise is based. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, next time. So I worked for the Domestic Intelligence Service for several years and in Germany, in Bavaria, and I now work for more than 10 years within the prison system. So I have direct contact with people who are on the threshold to take the wrong side, as I call it, and refuse to be part of a democratic society. And I also talk to inmates and people in prevention workshops and projects who already got radicalized and who already committed various violent crimes. So it's a mixture of personal experiences, my biography. So just take it what resonates, and I hope you will find some insights that could be interesting for you. So as I mentioned, over the last more than 20 years, Germany had several waves of radicalization in various extremist phenomena. And I remember 1993, it must have been that the Turkish Islamists declared the caliphate in Cologne. So it was not the Islamic State, to be honest. It was a Turkish community of Islamists in Germany who declared the caliphate after the Ottoman Empire. So we had from Germany more than 1,000 individuals who left the country to join ISIS later, or what was called ISIS. And we also had various radicalization waves within the right-wing extremists, and also now for the last years also with the left-wing extremists. So all these forms of radicalization have also been fueled by the virtual world, especially social media. But as someone who also experienced the rise of Facebook, I can guarantee you it's not only a virtual problem. When I talk to people who are being radicalized in the moment or already got radicalized, there is always a connection to the real world. So it's not enough to just say we just ban all social media or kind of regulate it. It's most of the times still a very personal interaction, so we should not forget that. There is a common belief that democracies, and this is something I experience in Germany for several years now, can mainly be protected by reducing politically motivated crimes. So this leads to a narrow focus on extremist criminal acts, namely terrorism. But in my opinion, and based on my experiences, democracies are not only threatened by violence, but maybe more deeply by extremist ideologies and belief systems. So at the same time, it's not only the question of terrorism, but we can also observe how our democracies are getting more and more under pressure. So there is a growing lack of political credibility, meaning citizens no longer trust institutions. In Germany, over 70% have no trust in the state capacity to act and solve problems, which is huge. And those are the newest numbers. Insecurities within our society fueled by a fear of future, we already heard about that, are increasing. Economic struggles that create a fertile ground for radicalization. We also heard this today. But also what I like to call the proximity of the world builds such a breeding ground. So people don't read the usual newspaper maybe we were used to. They have various channels and social media platforms where they get their information. So they have alternatives, meaning new forms of news consumption. And therefore we have an individualization of information, what I call TikTokization, because most people concentrate on TikTok. You could also call it Instagramization. So the consequences are each individual lives in their own feed, their own echo chamber, often isolated from alternative or different perspectives. So when it comes to Islamism, we have to understand that we have to focus more on the breeding ground, which is, in my opinion, Islamic fundamentalism. These are the people who reject democratic principles and values, who refuse gender equality, self-determination, who spread anti-Semitic narratives, and who therefore prepare the ground for radicalization. We also have political Islamists who claim to represent Muslims in general. I can tell you they don't represent me, but mainly represent fundamentalists, have grown their influence publicly and politically, also here in Brussels. And who have become, and this is something that really hurts me, a reliable partner for the governments and states, not only in Germany, I guess. So when it comes to prevention or questions about Islam, these people get called and not people like me. Even though not every fundamentalist is potentially a terrorist, every terrorist builds on fundamentalist thinking. So what does this mean for our response or possible solutions? I think first, we really have to accept that Islamism is an ideology, an anti-democratic belief system, and it's not a mental illness. Second, we need to address Islamic fundamentalism. We have to address political Islamism, not only terrorism or various criminal acts based on this ideology. We mostly focus on these violent actors, but as long as we focus on these people, we won't be able to weaken the core base in the long term. Third, we must understand that radicalization is a process and not a last-minute decision. People don't wake up as extremists, they become an extremist. So therefore, in my opinion, we have to strengthen prevention and not just disengagement after a crime. This means we must explain and teach the real benefits of democracy. It is not enough to say, this is how you vote. We need to show how democracy protects individual freedoms, offers opportunities, and protects diversity. And finally, this might be maybe a bit difficult, but I believe we must define clear red lines. Democratic societies need to be clear about what is acceptable and what is not. It is not enough, in my opinion, to draw red lines only through law enforcement, but necessary to draw them through consistent social and political responses. So in summary, let me say this. There is no good or bad extremist, no good or bad Islamist. All forms of radicalization erode democratic societies. So countering radicalization must start with defending democratic values visibly, confidentially, and without hesitation. And maybe one of the most important points, by choosing the right partners in prevention. If we work with organizations that themselves stand for a fundamentalist ideology, we weaken our efforts and we lose our credibility. In the end, our responsibility is clear. Prevention must begin with the protection of democratic values. And with that, I hope I used the 10 minutes correctly. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Gülden. I'm really apologizing to our next speaker, who is Abdulaziz Almaezooqi, because you are Deputy Head of Trans Global Sector and Director of Global Offices Department of Research and Advisory of a very important research body in the UAE. And I thought by putting you at last speaker, I would honor you. But unfortunately, we have a time schedule and we have to be out of here in 15 minutes. So I will immediately give you the floor, and I hope you will be able to explain everything you have to give to us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Good evening, esteemed. Is it working?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Yes. Yeah. Good evening, esteemed colleagues, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored here to be with you today at the European Parliament to discuss some of the most pressing challenges of our time: polarization and radicalization among Europe's youth. It is a topic that not only demands our attention, but also our collective action. At the heart of these challenges lies the rising influence of certain groups, extremist political movements, particularly those linked to the Muslim Brotherhood and their operations to various political NGOs across Europe. These groups have consistently sought to foster division within our societies, manipulating narratives and exploiting vulnerable communities for their own gain. It is essential that we understand how these structures operate, often disguised under the guise of progressive or woke ideologies, and the far-reaching consequences they have on the social fabric in Europe. Through financial support, strategic partnerships, and radical propaganda, these groups are contributing to the radicalization of youth and undermining efforts towards integration. As highlighted in our trends reports and symposia, it is crucial that we identify the sources of their power and funding by understanding how the Muslim Brotherhood and its affiliated NGOs work. We can better combat their insidious influence and safeguard Europe's values of unity and inclusion. Moving forward, it is equally important to address the role of education in combating radicalism. As per emphasized and highlighted by the Shaping Minds and Shaping Society report, education is not just a tool for academic development, but a means to empower youth with critical thinking skills and resilience against malign influences. We must advocate for educational reforms that foster open-mindedness, dialogue, and deeper understanding of diverse perspectives. Through international collaborations such as the Brussels Roundtables, we have seen the success of initiatives that promote counter and indoctrination and de-radicalization curricula. The aim must be built to education ecosystems that does not merely focus on academic success, but nurtures well-rounded, tolerant individuals who are resistant to extremist ideologies. Lastly, let us look at the lessons learned from the case studies around the world. One of the most notable examples comes from the UAE, where successful de-radicalization models have been implemented. These models offer valuable insights into how governments, communities, and institutions can work together to counter radicalization, particularly in Europe. And this book with me that I have brought, the policy paper 16, explains thoroughly the UAE model. And thank you for emphasizing our conferences, Brother Imam Tawhidi. However, we must also acknowledge the failures in some regions, The influence of brotherhood-linked NGOs has only deepened polarization. Rather than fostering a unified society, it is essential that we learn from both successes and failures and use data-driven insights to shape policies that counter the diverse forces at play. In conclusion, it is evident that tackling polarization and radicalization is not a task for any one institution or country. It is a global challenge that requires cooperation, vigilance, and unwavering commitment to the values of peace, tolerance, and interrogation. By addressing these issues head-on, we can ensure that the future of Europe's youth is one of unity, understanding, and progress. And as I usually say, if you want to disrupt the growth of a nation, disrupt the educational system. And once again, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Almaezooqi. I take away from here that we have to work all together. It's a global problem, and we will have only a global answer. That's why I commit myself with IMPAC to work with all of you and work with MEPs to change our world to a better world. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for being with us today. And I think this was a very good discussion and a very good exchange of views. And this was really, really important to build a strong future for our young people who wants to live in freedom, in peace, and in democracy. And this is our mission. And this is why I'm really thankful that you are here today and we had that discussion. So thank you and have a good evening now because it's very late and we have to go out of the room. But if you want, you can we can take a picture again at the end, maybe in front of that room. And thank you very much for being here and staying strong. And yes, thank you.